AskReddit. When did you not just dodge a bullet, but evade a full-on ballistic missile strike? I was traveling in Australia and stayed with this dude for a week or two. At first he was the coolest guy, but then I quickly realized he was a terrible alcoholic and a drug dealer that had recently been in prison. One night while I was out, he apparently got completely hammered and was causing a scene at the apartment complex, so the police were called. I show up and see cop cars everywhere. I had enough and just booked a flight for the next morning to see another city. I woke up in the morning and quickly threw my clothes into my bag, was about to leave without even saying goodbye. But I thought that was pretty rude, so I grabbed a pen and started writing a little thank you note to the guy for letting me stay. While writing the note, he wakes up and comes into the common room. I do the whole "oh shoot, sorry I didn't want to wake you but I found a cheap flight leaving right now." He responds, "Can I see your bag really quick before you leave? I think I left something in there." The dude fucking took his stash of meth and put it into my bag when the police showed up the night before. I just didn't notice it in my rush to get packed and leave. I was literally about to go board an airplane and I would have sat there like a moron with the exact same excuse everyone else uses, saying it's not mine. Would have been locked up abroad if I didn't decide to write that goodbye note. A friend in HS offered to pick me up and sneak out for a party. I was in the middle of a WoW raid and declined. Then it turned out he hit a tree and died from drunk driving. I was in a coma, didn't look like I'd come out of it. They had the talk with my wife about letting me go, she said no. Thanks wife. Edit. This blew up attaching a video my wife made of the first year of my recovery. Starts about a week after I came out of the coma. It was a catastrophic stroke. Similar experience. Bad brain bleed. She was told I wasn't going to make it, planned my funeral, got angry with me and yelled at me to come back to her. Brain bleed stopped. Came out of the coma a few days later. RB can explain how fucked I am, but I love that girl for talking me into living. And yes, I heard her and remember what she said. My husband accidentally took all my blood sugar meds, thinking they were Motrin when he had severe stomach pains. I didn't know what he was talking about taking all the prescription Motrin and rushed him to the ER when I figured out it was my blood sugar meds. It turned out to be acute pancreatitis, and he actually saved his organs and possibly his life by accidentally taking all those blood sugar meds. The rare occasion where two wrongs make a right. I was going to go to get dinner at a local deli. Instead, a friend told me about a meteor shower, so we packed snacks and drove to the mountains to watch meteors. That deli was shot up during a mass shooting that left 6 people dead right during the time when I would have been there. Thanks Tom, and thanks to the Camilla Pedalets. Oh shit, that was the guy who was at a troll in cell and posted a bunch of shit about how he was the perfect gentleman beforehand, right? We were booked to go on a cruise around New Zealand back in December 2019. I was psyched for it. We were going to go on a day tour to a volcano. However, our car had a massive engine issue and we decided to pull the plug because we couldn't afford to fix the car and go away. I'm sitting at work, feeling sorry for myself because I'm not on holiday, when reports start coming in. It was this. On the 9th of December 2019, Waikari White Island, an active stratovolcano island in New Zealand's northeastern Bay of Plenty region, explosively erupted. The island was a popular tourist destination, known for its volcanic activity, and 47 people were on the island at the time. 22 people died, either in the explosion or from injuries sustained, including 2 whose bodies were never found and were later declared dead. A further 25 people suffered injuries, with the majority needing intensive care for severe burns. It was horrific. The injuries were terrible. I just sat at work. I work for a news service, watching all the raw vision coming into the office, thinking about what might have been if our car hadn't needed that work done, or we were better with our finances, we would have been on that tour. When I moved back to New Orleans in 2004, I looked at 2 different apartments, A and B. I ended up choosing B because it was a little bit larger. I lived there for about 5 weeks and the neighbors were horrendous and management wouldn't do anything about it, so I went back to the other place to see if apartment A was still available. It wasn't, but they had another one downstairs in the building next door. So I ended up moving again, into apartment C. Apartment B flooded several feet in Katrina. Apartment A had the roof ripped off. Apartment C, where I had lived for a year, was fine. I cannot overstress how difficult my life would have been if my apartment had been damaged. Not even taking into account my belongings, it was damn near impossible to find anywhere to live for years after Katrina. It's not an exaggeration to say that if my apartment had been damaged, the entire trajectory of my life probably would have changed. Is it strange looking back at your life and realizing that you were the third pig in the Three Little Pigs story? Before we go further, please press the red subscribe button below if you're enjoying this so far. 9/11. I was living in Carroll Gardens at the time, a little bit south of the Brooklyn Bridge, and I was commuting via bike. Normally I'd wake up around 8 o'clock, get my stuff together and ride up Smith Street and go over the Brooklyn Bridge. I'd buy a few dozen Krispy Kreme donuts from their location in WTC for my team and then ride down to Wall Street where I worked. That particular Tuesday I overslept my alarm and had to take the subway in. I would have been at WTC right at the time of the first impact, but instead was on the subway. I actually was walking up out of the Wall Street subway stop right as the second plane was coming in and was able to see a little of the fireball and hear the citywide scream. The citywide scream. That must have been awful. I've seen plenty of footage from on the ground and it's bad, but I never thought about the sound of hundreds of thousands of people at the same time crying out in pain and shock and horror. It was the smell that I'll never forget. This strange mix of burning electronics. If you've ever had a circuit board go bad burnout, you know the smell, jet fuel, and burning paper. I still get freaked out when I smell burning electronics. The other thing was the papers. As I was walking up Water Street to get to the bridges where I could cross back over into Brooklyn, there were tons of papers raining down. Stock ticker tape, trade documents, etc. I picked up one and it was a resume. I kept it for years, too freaked out to look and see if that was one of the victims. What was it like after all that? Where did you go? My mom was near ground zero and had to walk across the Brooklyn Bridge in order to get to her family's house. She will never forget the face of an old Asian lady who needed help crossing the bridge. Once at the house, she realized that her sister was in one of the towers. The worst part of it was that the last conversion her sister had with her daughter was an argument in the morning and she never said "I love you." Now my mom gets flashbacks whenever an airplane flies overhead when it is close to the ground. I walked up to the Brooklyn Bridge and had crossed over to the Park Plaza around City Hall. As I went for the Brooklyn Bridge footpath, a cop told me they were using the Brooklyn Bridge for first responders and I had to use the Manhattan Bridge. About 2 seconds after he told me that, the South Tower started to collapse, hit second, collapsed first. There was a wave of heavy debris in the immediate vicinity of the towers, but smaller debris made its way to City Hall and I turned around just as the dust and smaller particles rushed past. I walked on toward the Manhattan Bridge and crossed, stopping in a little bodega store to buy some water so I could pour it over a towel I had. Yes, I'm a huge nerd. I always kept a towel in my backpack and use it to filter out the smoke that was now pouring over. Wind direction was northwest to southeast. It took me about 30 minutes to walk home on Court Street, and I was sure things were going to devolve into mass chaos and widespread looting. So I put my cat in his carrier and broke out my baseball bat and pepper spray. I couldn't have been more wrong. The city came together like nothing I've ever experienced. One of the tenants in the apartment building I lived in grabbed a full case of Kraft mac and cheese and made dinner for everyone. We all just stood outside basically having a huge WTF just happened conversation. A lot of people were angry and saying how Bush should nuke the entire Middle East. Had just finished a regular meeting I was the host of when one of my fiends said, "Hey, you don't look good." I told him I didn't feel great and was going to go home. He said, "Nah, I'm taking you to the doc." We go to the clinic, military, and after an extremely brief exam he turns to my friend and says take him to the ER and tell them it's his appendix. Less than an hour later I was in surgery. Thing is, I had just come back from a dive weekend where I did 2 days of boat dives 4 hours out in the Red Sea. Multiple dives were below 100 feet. If my appendix had decided to give out a day earlier I'd probably die. Met a guy online. Had a great first meeting. Made out a little. He mentions he knows a friend of mine. Ask her about him. She sends me his Judici page full of sexual assault convictions including more than one statutory rape. Edit: Hey guys, just realized why some of you were so surprised after reading my comment. He did have convictions but some of them were from cases that were dropped. Also, he had orders of protection against from at least 3 women. 4 years ago I was diagnosed with a very rare cancer. Specialist told me he could offer no guarantees I'd make it a year. Major surgery to remove a large mass and many further tests later I was told months later they actually got it wrong and I never had cancer. The specialist told me if he'd made a list of 100 possible outcomes at the start of my treatment my eventual diagnosis would have been at position 100. He'd never seen anything like it. I felt like I'd dodged a fucking nuclear warhead the day I was told that. So WTF was the large mass they removed if it wasn't cancer? The large mass turned out to be a secondary spleen. The surgeon says he had seen that before but this one was bigger than his fist which he had never seen even remotely. I have since been diagnosed with a connective tissue disorder which is probably the reason I had the secondary spleen in the first place. The combination of the mass seen on my scan and the symptoms I was suffering made them diagnose me with neuroendocrine tumor initially. When I was 17 I was going out with a girl from school. We smoked a little bit of hash. She was a lifeguard at a swimming pool. Her boss was a creepy guy in his late 20s who had a thing for my girlfriend. He found out we were going to a party and told the police that I was some major drug dealer. He gave the address of the party. At the last minute we decided not to go. We cooked dinner for her mum and stayed in and watched TV, smoked a joint in the garden. The party got raided, 2 vans full of police. All they got was a couple of underage drinkers. Edit. 1. How did we know he was a snitch? He told one of the lifeguards who told someone who told my girlfriend. 2. No, I wasn't a drug dealer but. Full disclosure, my girlfriend was supplying me in this instance. Were you a drug dealer? No, I would have probably had a bit of hash to share a joint or 2, nothing more. I pretty much kept dealers at arm's length. I would go in with a couple of buddies, one would do the business and we would share it out afterwards. Creepy lifeguard guy got in shit a few years later for trying to shift weed. The irony. High school. I was hanging out with some buddies and some guys I knew drove up. Since they knew we played tennis, they offered to sell us some top-notch rackets at low prices. We were curious so we went outside to look at what they had to offer and indeed, the rackets were top-notch and so brand new they still had the security tags on them. We declined. Turned out they had robbed a sporting goods store and shot a couple of clerks in the process. That's dumb as fuck. They're dumb as fuck. Some kids I went to high school with robbed a sporting goods store. They got caught because they were bragging about it at school. Most criminals aren't the brightest bulbs. Apple Watch said my pulse oxygen was 70 and to seek immediate medical attention. COVID IQ plus blood clots in lungs. I'd had died in my sleep if I hadn't gotten up. Oh, I should quit smoking and get a smartwatch. Our gas range in the kitchen malfunctioned. It was leaking natural gas all night. CO detector never went off. I woke up the following morning, walked downstairs and smelled it. It was so thick of gas you could taste it. Quickly opened all of the doors, windows and vacated. We waited about an hour before going back in. It was windy out so it cleared out quickly. Inspected everything, replaced the stove, and went on with the day. Nighttime came around and I went to take a shower but there wasn't any hot water. Turns out, for some unknown reason, the pilot light on the hot water tank was out and likely had been out all night. Had it not been out, my house would have been a crater and I wouldn't be typing this. A CO detector will not detect gas alone. You can buy natural gas or propane detectors. Good investment if you have a lot of indoor gas appliances. Thanks for watching. Please press the like button if you enjoyed and the notification bell next to the subscribe button to never miss another video. Let me know your thoughts below. Bye.